shake the ground.
Hello, and welcome to Autistic Standpoint Theory with the Autistic Culture Podcast Network. I am Isha Snow, researcher, author, and community organizer. If you haven't read my books, Autism in America or Autistic Standpoint Theory, they're both available on Kindle. You can also follow my work on Substack. Links will be in the show notes. This show specifically is about how social differences are not deficits. We talk about what autistic people know about the world, about themselves, and about the systems around them. Today I'm talking with someone who is in the middle of navigating neurotypical systems currently. Dani Stevens is a student in the Social and Environmental Justice Certificate Program at Washington State University in Vancouver, my cohort, which is how we know each other. They've done something really remarkable this quarter. The peer support group that I started in rural Cathlamet where I live inspired them to build their own on campus at WSU. And their neurodivergent social group has since become a registered student club. So what I want to talk about with Dani today is what it's actually like to be neurodivergent in a university in the early stages of figuring out what comes next from inside the neurodivergent experience. Dani, I want to start at the beginning. When did you find out that you were neurodivergent, and what did that actually mean to you when you found out? What did that tell you about your identity?
Yeah, so for me, I always felt different. I always knew that something just quite wasn't what everyone else experienced, and I didn't have a word or a way to describe what I was feeling. And then I want to say around 2020, with the uprise of TikTok and everything, I started seeing a lot, and I mean a lot of content from people with ADHD and their experiences, and I realized I'm not lazy. I'm not just being irresponsible. It's literally a part of my biology. I go for my third appointment. As I'm checking in for my third appointment, on my chart, suspected autism. And that wasn't there the last time. And so I spent my third appointment talking with her because given everything going on in the United States with Trump and RFK Jr. and everything, I was hesitant to get it officially diagnosed. But I knew for myself I needed to have it listed. And so at the end of the third appointment, I walked out and I had my diagnosis. As of the time of this recording, I'm sitting at not even a year and a half of being officially diagnosed for either. Like a year and 3 months about. So I'm still freshly diagnosed.
Welcome to the club.
I didn't have any form of support in school. Any form of support when it came to anything. And yes, I did pretty okay in the subjects I was interested in. In subjects that I wasn't, I struggled my ass off, but because I'm a hard worker and my family made it where my job was school, and if I did bad, I was a bad person and a bad kid, and
Same.
Yeah, a lot of trauma there.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I'm just there are so many signs in my childhood that I was ADHD and I was autistic. How was this missed? And the longer I research it, it's just oh yeah, because it was only researched on white men, white boys initially, and women were not believed to be able to be autistic. And so move into middle school, get bullied a lot, same with elementary school, because people could tell there was something a little off with me. Then come into high school, really not my vibe. Still struggling. I took my freshman English course. I I always felt like I struggled with English, and like my grades in English were never great. And this is going to be ironic because now English is in my major, and like when you are in college, you have to submit a writing portfolio before you graduate. I'm in the process of publishing an article about uh, two marginalized communities, being autistic and transgender people, being more likely to be victimized by crime and propaganda and all these things, and bad police training that don't know how to handle neurodivergent crises. And so, like, it's kind of really weird going from like struggling to like, I'm actually good at this. I'm my own worst critic, and I feel like that's very common for autistic people to be our own worst critic. In 2016, I graduate with both my associate's degree and my high school diploma in the same week. That was a crazy week.
Nice.
It was a very crazy week. And then I go off to Western Washington University. I'm treated as a freshman, but also as a junior, and those are two very different standards. And being undiagnosed neurodivergent, it was just too much for me to handle. So I drop out, and I don't think about going back to school because it's just like, what's the point? Like, this is way too much. Like, I'm not functioning well. Like, why did I go from like managing to do not just high school but Running Start and working a like part to almost full-time job and having all that structure to like, I can't handle? Like, what happened? Like, that stringent structure in like your early years, it can be really beneficial, but like once you're done, you're kind of thrown for a loop. And I think a lot of like young people deal with that, but especially for neurodivergent people, it's a lot harder of a change than for a neurotypical person. And so like when I was done back in 2020 and 2017, my GPA was 2 point something, not close to a 3. It was like 2.6, 2.4, something like that. It wasn't good. It wasn't great. And it came down to the accommodations. Like, I won't lie. I've never received a 4.0 up until this fall semester. Then this semester, for spring 2026, I won't lie, it was a very rough semester. My internship was just really all over the place, and I didn't feel as supported this semester. And I was in the process of getting the neurodivergent student support group up and running. And like the first time I tried to host it, no one showed. No biggie, try again. This time I get people to come, and then we decided to meet weekly, and having the people involved, like Isha here, it was a really great experience. And because I'm not necessarily going to be in the same position that I was, because I'm also a student organizer for CSCJ, which is the Collective for Social and Environmental Justice at WSU Vancouver, I decided, you know what, I'm actually going to make it a club. And so I have a really great vice president, Helios. He's awesome, who is helping me, and I have an amazing professor as the advisor, and she's the one that's wanting me to publish my paper, and I'm an undergraduate, so it's kind of been like a weird realization, like, I can do it. I always had a goal in my head of being a writer. Like, I loved writing creative fantasy stories. And so, like, I'm really looking forward to getting my group up and running as a club.
That's super exciting.
And we are actually going by Lumina. And forgive me, I may butcher the exact acronym, but it should be learning, understanding, mindfulness, or mindful, something like that. Inclusivity, neurodivergence, awareness, or acceptance. Because I want the group to be open to not just neurodivergent students, but to people who want to better know and support neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because we struggle to find community in general. And like, I've felt alone all my life, even though I've had friends. And like, I still have friends, don't get me wrong, I do have some friends. But I never, like, even in my own family, like, I never felt like I belonged. And so being able to be like coming together and sharing information of like, hey, did you know that this is a thing? Because like a lot of people don't know about Ehlers or Ehlers. I say Ehlers most of the time, Ehlers-Danlos or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It's a connective tissue issue that's super comorbid with people who are neurodivergent. Socially, I struggled. It may not have always appeared that way. So like in pre-K or whatever, it wasn't kindergarten, it was like, some people call it Head Start, some people call it pre-K. It's different depending on where you're at. I was the social butterfly. Like, I lived in a small town, Washougal, Washington. I was a social butterfly. I made friends with every single person. Kindergarten was a really interesting time for me. And I think like around second, third grade was really when people started like when other kids started like pulling away and recognizing like there's something off about her. And so like I was bullied a lot. I was kind of on the outskirts of a lot of different like friend groups, and like never really felt that I belonged. And like I only really made friends with people who were also a little bit like weird, and like I pick up accents, and like that's the thing with people with ADHD and neurodivergence in general, is we tend to mirror because we're masking. So I pick up accents like that. It's really, really bad at times, because like I will forget what my normal voice sounds like. And so like I will literally filter from like a southern accent to Australian or Welsh. And so like I filter through accents like crazy, and like I've been told that I'm rude when I do that, and it's just like, I'm not trying to be rude. I didn't even realize I was doing this. Like, please take my words at face value, and I promise I'm not trying to make fun of your accent. It's just like, I think it's really pretty. And as you can tell now, I'm filtering through different accents a little bit, and I'm not trying to.
The same thing happened to me when I went down to visit family in Arkansas when I was a teenager. I ended up coming back to California with the "thank you, ma'am," like Southern drawl.
Yeah.
And yeah, but when I was in Arkansas doing it back to them, they like took it as like being made fun of, and I wasn't even thinking of it.
It's something that like I don't even realize when I'm doing it half the time. And like I remember the first time that I actually like really picked up an accent. So like a little bit, I'm just masking, and I didn't know I was masking. And like I realize now, like I scripted a lot of conversations, and I would play back things in my head, or I would make up situations in my head of, ooh, if I say this, it could go this way, or if I don't, it could go that way. I didn't realize how hard I struggled with social interactions. And like now I have a really, really small support system. I don't have very many friends. And so I still struggle. And like even when trying to find like a internship or another like part-time position right now, because I'm trying to get something as I continue school. I should be graduating this upcoming spring, 2027, but still struggling to like know how much of me to put out there, and like how much eye contact should I give. And especially like I'm a mom, and like being a mom to a neurodivergent kid is so isolating. And like becoming a parent, especially if you're the first person in your friend group like I am to really become a mom, the isolation is so hard. And then add on the fact that my kiddo is autistic and it has very high support needs. And we suspect ADHD. By we, I mean, like, I know it because I have ADHD. I know he has ADHD. His doctors won't diagnose because he's mostly nonverbal. Mm. And so it's just like trying to find those connections and building community is something I've always desired. Like, I always wanted to be connected. I always wanted to fit in and, like, connect and, like, interact and have those close friendships that you could call on a Tuesday evening and be like, dude, I got some tea to spill because, like, dude, some crazy things are going on, like, in my family or what have you. Or just, like, you know, messaging people like, hey, how are you doing? And, like, genuinely meaning it, because a lot of neurotypical, when they ask, how are you? They're not actually asking you how you are really doing. And for me, I want to know, how are you really doing? You know, could be better or not good, but doesn't elaborate. I'm just like, I want to know you. I want to know what you're struggling with. I want to help. Even if it's offering just a space for you to vent. Offering cat pictures or kid videos, because my kid is funny. He's very happy and very energetic. And he does some of these funniest things you can do. Like, trying to build those connections and, like, try and be as genuine as possible. The more I grow, the older I get, the more I realize that community is so essential for human beings, because we are social creatures. We are social creatures. We do not do well in isolation. And a lot of us, especially people in the neurodivergent community, feel isolated all the time, and we don't necessarily know how to reach out. We don't necessarily know how to make those connections. And, like, it's something that I still struggle with. It's probably going to be something I struggle with for the rest of my life. But my goal with the Lumina group, my goals in general, is to help people feel connected and have community. It also ties into, like, homeless, like, people who are on the spectrum are more likely to end up homeless.
Yeah, I know that we've talked about my nonprofit project, the Neurohomes Communities, where I'm basically trying to build that social support net, or the village that we don't have. Over 70 million adults identify as disabled, per the CDC in 2024. There are about 15 million disabled children in the U.S. According to Rutgers, 1/3 of American households have a disabled person in them. 1 in 5 Americans are considered neurodivergent or disabled, and 84% of disabled people lack affordable, secure housing. 85% of autistic adults are currently unemployed or underemployed. Neurohomes Communities and the Neurohomes Foundation are building affordable housing communities with on-site supportive services designed specifically for neurodiverse adults in rural Washington state, with plans to expand nationally. The Neurohomes model is built on the simple premise that neurodiverse adults deserve housing that actually works for the ways that they live, think, and connect. If you believe stable, affirming housing is a disability justice issue, visit Neurohomes online to learn more, or support the Capital campaign at neurohomes.org. And the things that I'm learning in college right now, that I'm sure you're learning as well, have just been shocking to me, and honestly really discouraging when I'm looking at my own future. They're saying somewhere in between 80 to 85% of autistics, even with college degrees, are unemployed. I
Yeah.
think something along the lines of up to 60% of the unhoused population is known to be autistic at this point, and most of them don't even have diagnoses because they aren't able to access those services. And more, it's looking like the people who can't fit into society, who don't mask as well, they're just basically getting tossed out on the curb. And
Yep.
so we have that coercive control, or that, that threat basically over our heads kind of hovering all of the time.
Oh, yeah. It makes me excited to help with the work that you're doing because I I have always been a person who firmly believes that every single person, and I mean it, every single person deserves their basic human needs being met. Every person. Doesn't matter about disability or ability or race or anything. Every single person deserves their basic human needs being met. And part of that is social interaction. That is a basic human need. And people don't recognize it as a basic human need. Like, yes, there are other basic human needs as housing, as food, as, water, and a place to be able to be clean. And, those are truly necessities. But social connection is also a necessity, and a lot of people don't recognize it. And I find that really interesting. And I feel like there should, again, be more studies done about social connectivity and how essential it is.
I actually want to talk about that for a brief second, because before you were talking about the ills of the world and everything going on in especially American politics, but even globally, and how scary that is. And I think there actually is a pretty direct correlation between that and the fact that society doesn't understand how important relational skills are. And that was kind of the big awakening point that I had in my own former marriage. The pushing point that got me out of that was I realized that our emotional and our social needs are not really even recognized in this culture as being valid. Um, and you mentioned the Disability Center on campus and accessing those services in the classroom. One of the issues that I've had on campus with the Disability Center is that all of their supports are structural. So they will help you in the classroom, but anything outside of the classroom, not so much. And so I've been asking them now for 2 years for some sort of social support. And I would think, given that autism, one of the main criteria is struggling socially, that it would just be a given. So I was really surprised when I was late diagnosed to realize that there are not a lot of social supports for adults, especially because you would think that that would just go hand in hand, like, oh, you're autistic, here's your social support, right?
Absolutely. Like, I've always felt that kindness is key. Like, kill them with kindness kind of thing. But I think it's definitely, like, I still struggle with social interaction, and I think it is something that is necessary, that schools need to have that built in, to have that social connected. And that's part of the, like, goal of the group, that the club that I'm doing, is having that peer support, having that space where you can go to and just connect with people who are similar. Not exactly the same, because we're all freaking different, but similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really impactful, because I know, like, I was messaging Helios and, like, expressing, like, how I was nervous about my interview because I really wanted the position. Mind you, I didn't get it, and I had a really bad mental health day because I struggle with rejection sensitivity, and it's real or perceived. So, like, a lot of like there's this one video that explains it by like Katiosaurus. She wrote an ADHD guide, but it's just like social interactions, like negative is really negative, neutral is negative, and positive is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like, that's really true. So like as I was mentioning earlier, like when people would talk about plans and I wasn't specifically invited, it felt like a rejection, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I perceived it as a rejection. So like the group is going to be there for people to just have a space to come and chill and talk to other people, form connections, and connect. And like that, like I would recommend Trio student support services on campus as well. They do have peer mentors. That was actually the position I was interviewing for. Unfortunately, I wasn't chosen. But they've been great. Like they're part of the like reason why we had the room on campus that we used for the meetings. It's their space, and like they were happy to help host us. And so I definitely agree that social supports need to be given in school. And I think it should start at a young age, not just in high school or in college. I think, especially when you're a kid, it's really hard to connect with people. And like a lot of autistic kids will talk like more adult like, and like because we mirror. And so like we don't always necessarily feel super comfortable with other kids and talking like other kids. And like there's this like pushed expectation, especially for females.
Mm-hmm.
We are supposed to be quiet. We are supposed to be ladylike. We are supposed to be insert whatever stupid word you want. Submissive. I hate that. I don't think that women should be submissive. Period. I think we should each be our own person, but you know, we're forced these expectations really, really young. And so like we'll struggle with that social connective. Like if I was able to still be like that social butterfly that I was when I was in kindergarten or pre-K, and people would have that understanding like of like, hey, it's okay that she's a little different. I think I would have had a lot better life, you know? So like for like I think, you know, there are topics that kids won't grasp, but kids are really resilient. They are intelligent, and like they get things pretty quick. So I think if there was a way to have it integrated into classrooms where it's just like, let's take a moment to talk a little bit about insert interesting topic, whether it's about autism or ADHD or insert other like health conditions, in an age appropriate manner. Okay? Age appropriate manner of like, hey, yeah, there are people who are different, and that's okay. We still need to include them, even if they don't talk, even if they won't make eye contact. It's okay if they don't. If you guys just want to play next to each other, great. Great. Body doubling. Doing different things, but in the same space, able to get things done. It's really, like, beneficial. And so, like, I'm just like, I realize, oh, hey, I have chronic health conditions. I shouldn't be pushing myself so hard physically. I don't need to be so hard on myself mentally. Like, giving the diagnosis process really just allowed myself to give myself the grace. And, like, I cried tears of joy when I was diagnosed. And I wish, part of the issue, with people trying to find those connections is there's not a lot of space that are neurodivergent friendly. because a lot of us are light sensitive. For example, the stage lights
Right.
are very, very bright. And like we have noise sensitivity and light sensitivity, or we're very extremely sensory seeking, like my kid. It's hard to find those spaces that accommodate those needs. And so there needs to be more accommodation in not just like the physical space, but with social interactions. And I wish there was a baseline understanding of neurodivergence in the whole world, like across the board, because we all struggle differently. Each and every person has their own struggles, whether they're neurotypical or not. We all deal with things. We all deal with things differently. And having that understanding and compassion of, hey, I may not know your struggles. I may not have dealt with the same things, but I can empathize and like recognize that those things are really hard. And you know, I can't put myself in those shoes because I don't know how, I don't even know if I'd be standing here, you know, or sitting here, because I'm sitting, I'm not standing. But, you know, so it's just like social support should be integrated.
I think the main reason it isn't, and also I think the main reason why neurotypical culture is so at odds with autistic culture is because they are, their culture is based on judgment. Like, there's a lot of projection, and there's a lot of, because of that implicit communication, there's just a lot of snap judgments, you know, and I find that really goes at odds with autistic culture, which tends to be a little bit more understanding and based on curiosity, you know, more growth mindset oriented as opposed to closed, judgments. But you were talking about rejection, sensitivity, and I feel like that kind of ties into a conversation that we were having recently about how studies have been done where typicals will come to snap judgments and basically decide they don't like us even before we talk. Just
Yeah.
how do they pick up on that vibe, right? But when we're looking at things like 80 to 85% of autistic people being unemployed, that it really comes down to not being a skill issue on our part, but more of that judgment issue on the world's part.
I feel that really strongly, especially because I've interviewed for 3 different internship-ish. One wasn't like labeled as an internship, but internships nonetheless. And every time it was either no reply or experience that was slightly more aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming from like a decade plus of customer service experience, over 3 years in the banking industry. Like, I have experience. In reality, I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's more so being neurodivergent
Mm-hmm.
and being open about it, because I don't like lying, as I said earlier. And so like when I'm in those positions of like I value honesty, and so I will tend to be maybe too honest about being disabled. And because like it feels like lying if I'm not upfront.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like it's a really hard dichotomy to be in, where you're living under a capitalist system that cares about profit and not people. And I think that's messed up, to say the least. And like once I'm given the opportunity, and I think this is common for most people on the spectrum, once we're given the opportunity and we're in the door, usually we can do really good. But the door is constantly being slammed in our face. and boarded up in a lot of cases. So
I read a meme on Facebook. I'm always getting all of my news from memes, but I saw a meme.
Memes are great, man.
They are. But I saw one that said the other day something along the lines of call burnout what it really is. It's not burnout, it's being exploited. And that was like a light bulb moment for me. I was just like, yes, because I can go to school, I can study, I can do research. I'm actually really good at research when I have that support structure in place, when I'm not overextending myself. But when academia keeps moving those goalposts and when they're asking me to spread myself too thin.
I feel that so much. Right now, I'm honestly in a bit of burnout as well from the semester, and I'm very glad that I don't have to go back to school until August. But I still have a lot of things that I need to get done this summer. And so it's just like, how do you balance being a person and all the expectations that we have? All the pressure that we have, all the things that we have to do in order to survive. How are we expected to manage that all? And like in my case, I'm not just managing my own schedule, I'm managing my husband's schedule a bit. Although, like, please don't give my husband hate. He is actually like, I would not be alive if it weren't for him. Full stop. Like, I would not be alive. But I still manage the schedules. I manage his emotions at times because he's also autistic, and we struggle, especially if you're working a high demand job or if you're in a high demand situation with it, whether it's school or work or whatever commitments that you have on your plate. Things just kind of start falling off the plate because it's just like, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this. Like, I don't know how I got 4.0 this semester. I'm going to be really honest. I don't know how I did it. I somehow did it. Yay. But that was a lot, And so it's just like, where can we find that, like, those places, those companies that are understanding, helpful, and actually care about the person? How can we teach young neurodivergent people that when people say give 100%, they mean give 100% outside of what you need for yourself?
Right.
Even if that's just 5%. But making those connections is so hard, and having that support and not burning yourself out trying to meet those expectations, even if they're internalized expectations. And there's always that threat of homelessness, there's always that threat of hunger, there's always that threat of violence, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're not white, or if you're not neurotypical. Like, there is a higher risk to us existing. I'm trying to be a good mom for my kid, but I feel like I'm not giving him enough. But I'm barely giving myself anything because it's hard to care for myself. It's kind of like you have I feel like I need to like gamify it and like treat myself like I would a sim or something, or your pet. Like, imagine I'm a pet that I need to care for, but like that's also really rough.
I think it's called the mom friend bypass, where it's like easier to take care of other people than it is to take care of yourself.
Dude, I've been the mom friend
even
before I was a mom.
Mm-hmm.
I was the mom friend when I was, 12?
Mm-hmm.
13? Teenager. I was the mom friend. I got my license when I was 16. And like I was driving when I was 15 with my learner's permit, got my license at 16, and like I became the designated chauffeur. I helped raise my little brother because like my parents were not the best. I find it really interesting that like women go undiagnosed until later in life most of the time. Yes, there are some people who are diagnosed early, which is fantastic for them, happy for them. But I feel like a lot of women are diagnosed after they have kids. After, and especially after they go through the process of having their kid diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this one creator who was just like, you know, when you go through the process to get your kid diagnosed, they should also be like also testing you, testing the parents.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that up because you were talking about how your parents weren't that great. And honestly, I can really, really relate. I've gone through so much trauma healing and, shadow work and all of the therapy and everything,
It's
especially in the
process.
in the last 5 years, especially. But what I realized through that process, right, is that the generational trauma and the neurodivergency tend to go hand in hand because what I'm looking at
Oh,
least in my
yeah.
own family, is that that genetic trait of emotional dysregulation. And so that trauma then from the emotional dysregulation is being handed down generation to generation. What
100%. Looking back after going through the diagnosis process myself and just like picking up on things, I I genuinely think that my mom was also autistic, but undiagnosed all her life. And then on my dad, on the flip side, I know this has ADHD, okay? Just like he bragged about having 3 jobs at once. Like 3 different jobs and like loving it and like being able to flip from thing to thing to thing. Very much ADHD and like forgetfulness, like guarantee this man has it. How are you supposed to connect? How am I supposed to feel safe to connect to my parents? Like especially with my mom, like I remember there was one time I tried to go to her for emotional support and I'm bawling my eyes out because I honestly that was probably the first time I actually like can pinpoint an autistic meltdown. And I felt I had to comfort her when I was needing comfort. So I didn't feel comfortable going to my parents for support when I was getting bullied, when I was dealing with hard things because they were my first bullies.
mm-hmm.
They put the expectations so high. And because I was really good at masking and pushing myself and making myself as small as possible, it's it's still trauma I deal with daily. And I've had years of therapy. And I mean years of therapy. And I'm still, like, I still struggle. And so being resilient is good, but also it's not the compliment that people think it is. Again, it comes back to the rejection sensitivity and how compliments are felt as a neutral and not actually a true positive, and neutrals are negative, and negatives are really negative.
Mm-hmm. I want to first pause and kind of briefly acknowledge everything that you've told me. As far as your trauma history goes, I just really want to say that you know this, but you deserved better, and I'm sorry that you went through that. Um, Earlier, you were relating your childhood and the unrealistic expectations being placed on you. And when you were talking about that, I kind of flashed back to earlier in this conversation where we were talking about, kids at school kind of lacking those social and emotional skills. And ultimately, when I look at things like the double empathy problem in my research scholar eyes, what I'm seeing is that lack of connection you're talking about. And I ultimately think that if we're looking at that sort of neurotypical culture being based on those, implicit, inferred communications and all of those snap judgments and the discard of people treating human beings like they're objects, what it really comes down to for me is the expectation in childhood that children meet the demands of adults. I really think that it would do a complete 180 and a cultural shift if instead we were teaching adults to meet the needs of children.
100% it would. It would make a huge difference. It would lead to a community, a world that actually cared and actually had that there. So like in other countries there really is like a big sense of community. I think it would allow for so much more freedom for people to be themselves and to be accepted and to be loved and cared for, because it would just be the norm. It would be the norm. As a kid, like, I could just imagine if I had the emotional and physical supports that kids deserve to have, because they're little human beings. They're not your little puppets. They're not a mini you. They are their own individual person. I would be in so much better mental and physical health wise, and a lot of people would be. I don't think homelessness would be such a big thing. I don't think a lot of the issues that we face as a society, wicked problems, would be a thing if that social and cultural and that switch were to happen. That's part of, like, that's one thing that I would love to work towards and be a part of in creating that change. Because change is necessary. Change is necessary. It may be hard, people don't like change, but it is necessary, because we're not supposed to be the same person as we were when we were 5, as we were when we were 10, as we were when we were 13, 15, 17. Fill in the age number. You're not supposed to be the same person you were 20 years ago, 5 years ago. You should grow. Growth is so good. Because, I mean, look at the plants. They are all different and all beautiful. There's so much diversity in nature and in humans, and it should be celebrated instead of ostracized and thrown away and demonized. We, as a society, especially in the United States, would institutionalize people, or they would be locked away, or, killed off, especially with the eugenics movement. And that's still a thing, especially with what RFK Jr. has been talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's horrible, absolutely horrible. But, like, looking at it historically, like, it's documented so clearly that, like, we have existed, we will exist. That doesn't make us any less human. We are people. We are unique. We have different strengths. We still are worthy and deserving of love and life, and to have our needs being met. And in the society we live, they're not being met. And I think, like, it's really important for advocacy to be there. Like, people like Caitlin, who is an autistic creator, or Morgan Foley, just to name a couple people that I personally follow, they share their experiences, and I think it's really important that people are shown, and not for entertainment value, but just to show, like, we are still people, even if because like there are times that I lose the ability to talk. I regress where I get to the point where I can't talk. Like I can't verbalize. And that's not talked about a lot. The regression in skills of the ability to mask as well as we used to before diagnosis. Like before diagnosis, I was masking all the time. And so it's really interesting how things could change if society and culture were to accept and understand. There's a lot of hatred towards people who are different. And I think that is one of the biggest things that is harmful, not just to neurodivergent people, but to people who don't fit the norm, whether it's beauty standard, mental health, physical standard, financial standard, insert whatever standard you can think of. I think instead of having a standard, there shouldn't be a standard. There should just be everyone is unique and everyone should get support. And yeah, that support is going to look different for each person.
This has been an amazing conversation with Dani Stevens, a student in my cohort at the Collective for Social and Environmental Justice at Washington State University in Vancouver. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this show. I think it's really important to have that voice out there. So
I think what we've really talked about a lot is how change needs to happen, and right now we are being ruled by fear. We have a fear culture that tries to fit everyone in the same box, and what you and I are both working on is creating more of a love-based world where it's based on connection and community, and there just being no box.
Yeah.
I was quiet in the back row, watching all the rules. Everybody read the same page. I was learning from the tools. Little signals, hidden meanings. I was counting every sound. While the world was moving faster, I was building my own ground from the edges. I could see it. What gets missed when nobody sees it? Different mind, different light. Still I'm standing here tonight. Methodology from the margins. Hear the truth in every line. It's just now we're speaking clearly. From the outside we define. Not broken, just becoming. Not lost, just finally found. Methodology from the margins, and our voices shake the ground. Every label had a limit, every room had a lock, but I found my own language in the ticking of the clock. Patterns in the pavement, honesty and what was real. All the things they called too much were the things that let me feel from the edges. I could see it. What gets missed when nobody sees it? Different mind, different light. Still I'm standing here tonight. Methodology from the margins. Hear the truth in every line. It's just snow, we're speaking clearly. From the outside we define. Not broken, just becoming. Not lost, just finally found. Methodology from the margins, and our voices shake the ground. If you never fit the picture, maybe you were made to change the frame. Every voice deserves a window, every story names its name. the ground.